3.9 million years ago. Survival was not just about hunting, food, or fire. It was about something far more powerful: family. The world was brutal. Forests stretched endlessly, filled with predators waiting in silence. Saber-toothed cats prowled the shadows. Hyenas with bone-crushing jaws circled the plains. Gigantic birds scanned the ground for the smallest movement. And in this world of constant danger, our ancestors were fragile. No weapons, no fire, no strong shelters, only courage, only instinct. But even in this savage age, one truth guided them. Families had to be protected. Mothers, fathers, children, elders. No one could survive alone. Together, they stood stronger. At night, families huddled in caves, placing children in the center while adults guarded the edges. The dark echoed with roars and growls, but voices rose in unison: shouts, screams, stone against stone to scare away predators. Unity was their shield. In daylight, survival continued. Mothers taught children which roots to dig, which berries were safe. Fathers and elders scouted the horizon for danger. Children learned quickly, because every mistake was deadly. Each member had a role, and every role meant survival. Predators soon realized that a group of humans was not easy prey. Stones were hurled. Sticks became weapons. Fire had not yet been mastered, but courage alone created a barrier. They could not match the beasts in strength, but they could outthink them, outlast them, outfight them together. This was humanity's first law: protect the family at all costs.
Woo!
Love gave birth to courage, fear gave birth to unity, and the will to protect the weak became the foundation of our species. Even in those dark, endless nights, when predators circled and storms raged, families endured. Because even 3.9 million years ago, protecting the ones you loved was worth everything. 3.9 million years ago, life on Earth was wild, scary, and beautiful. There were no cities, no cars, and definitely no TikTok. Instead, there were gigantic animals everywhere. Some were cute, like the tiny monkey-like creature called a mangabe. Others were terrifying, like the Gigantopithecus, and a plike monster nearly 10 feet tall. And then there were the weird ones, like the Ambulocetus, a crocodile-whale hybrid that lurked in the water. Back then, our ancestors weren't like us either. They were different from modern humans, shorter, hairier, and smarter than modern humans. They walked on two legs, used tools, and hunted for food. They also lived in a world that was much warmer than it is today. The ice caps were smaller, the sea levels were higher, and most of the world was covered in lush forests and swamps. In fact, if you were alive 3.9 million years ago, you would have found yourself living in a tropical paradise, except for one small detail. There were gigantic monsters everywhere. Luckily, you wouldn't have been completely defenseless. You would have been a member of a human family, and your family was your greatest weapon. We often think of ancient people as isolated hunters and gatherers who lived alone and only cared about themselves. But that wasn't true. In fact, 3.9 million years ago, the only way to survive was to work together, to help each other and to love each other. That's why we're here today. You see, 3.9 million years ago, survival was not just about hunting, food, or fire. It was about something far more powerful: family. The world was brutal. Forests stretched endlessly, filled with predators waiting in silence. Saber-toothed cats prowled the shadows. Hyenas with bone-crushing jaws circled the plains. Gigantic birds scanned the ground for the smallest movement. And in this world of constant danger, our ancestors were fragile. No weapons, no fire, no strong shelters, only courage, only instinct. But even in this savage age, one truth guided them: families had to be protected. Mothers, fathers, children, elders, no one could survive alone. Together, they stood stronger. If you were a child, you would have been cherished. Your mom would have carried you on her back. She would have fed you when you were hungry and kept you close when you were scared. Your dad would have taught you how to hunt and how to fight. Your siblings would have become your best friends. Your grandparents would have shared stories and knowledge around the fire. Your extended family would have welcomed you. Your cousins, aunts, and uncles would have looked after you. Back then, it wasn't uncommon for entire communities to live together, sharing resources and protecting each other. And when night fell, your family would have huddled in a cave. Inside the cave, you would have seen flickering shadows on the walls. You would have heard the drip, drip, drip of water echoing in the darkness. And you would have felt safe, because even though the outside world was dangerous and unpredictable, inside the cave you were loved. At night, families huddled in caves, placing children in the center while adults guarded the edges. The dark echoed with roars and growls, but voices rose in unison shouts, screams, stone against stone, to scare away predators. Once inside, the strongest men of the family would have slept near the entrance of the cave, always ready to defend everyone inside. They would have kept watch while the rest of the family slept, huddled together for warmth and comfort. When the men were awake, you would have learned what it meant to be a member of your family. You would have listened to the older men telling stories about past hunts, battles, and adventures. These stories weren't just for entertainment, they were a way to pass down knowledge, skills, and traditions. It was a time to learn about the world outside the cave and to understand what it meant to be a man. But sometimes the night would be too long, the darkness too deep, and the dangers too real. And you would have felt fear grip your heart. That's when the older men would tell stories.